There are moments that don't feel like moments when they happen. They feel like Tuesday, like another morning, like nothing. And then, years later, you realize that was the moment everything started to crack open. This is the story of a woman who walked into a room and refused to shrink. Of a man who built an empire and forgot to build a life. Of an insult that didn't break her, it clarified her. Of a love that didn't announce itself with fireworks, but with spreadsheets at 2 a.m. With the careful pronunciation of a name. With the quiet courage to choose truth over safety. Before we begin, if stories about real human courage move you, the kind that doesn't shout but simply stands, hit that subscribe button. Because this one is going to stay with you. Let's go back to the beginning. The building rose 47 stories into the Seoul skyline, glass and steel pretending to touch the clouds. Kang and Associates. Investment and strategy. A name that opened doors in 3 countries, that made ministers take meetings, that turned a consulting firm started by a determined father into something his son had made untouchable. Adayaze Obi, Ada to anyone who hadn't earned the right to say her full name, stood at the revolving door on her first Monday and felt the air conditioning hit her face like a challenge. 26 years old, Nigerian, Igbo, the best analyst in any room she'd ever entered, though she never said that out loud. She didn't need to. The work spoke. The numbers bent to her. Patterns revealed themselves to her like secrets whispered to a friend. She had not come to Seoul to be noticed. She had come because this was the best. The internship orientation was a blur of names she would forget and faces that would blend together. What she remembered was the light, how the conference room windows flooded with morning sun, how the city below seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what these new people would become. Ada sat in the second row. Not the front, that was for the eager, the performative. Not the back, that was for the checked out, the second row. Close enough to see everything, far enough to observe. She took notes in a leather-bound journal, handwriting precise and slanted, the way her mother had taught her in Enugu. Your mind is a palace, Adeze. Don't let clutter in. The department head, a man named Mr. Park who would prove kind but forgettable, explained the internship structure. 12 weeks, 3 major projects, 1 final review. The top performer would receive consideration for permanent placement, though he said this with the tone of someone describing a theoretical possibility, like winning a lottery you hadn't bought a ticket for. Ada bought the ticket with her eyes. She always did. Kang Ji-hoon moved through the building like weather. You didn't see him coming, but you felt the shift. The conversations that trailed off. The spines that straightened without conscious thought. The way the air seemed to rearrange itself to accommodate his gravity. 35 years old. Built like someone who had never had time for the gym but had the discipline to go anyway. Dark suits that cost more than some cars. A face that could have been handsome if it had ever relaxed into something human. But it didn't. It held. It performed control the way other men performed charm. He was engaged. Everyone knew. The arrangement had been in place for 2 years. Im Chae-young, daughter of a construction conglomerate. The merger of families that made business sense, that kept boards happy, that turned a consulting firm into something with the weight to move markets. Ji-hoon didn't talk about it. He didn't need to. The engagement was furniture in the room of his life, present, functional, unremarked upon. That Monday, he passed the briefing room where Ada sat with 11 other interns. He didn't look in. He didn't need to. He had stopped looking at new people years ago. There was no point. They would either prove useful or they wouldn't. The looking could wait. The first week passed in a current of data and deadlines. Ada didn't sleep much. She didn't need to. Her mind was a palace, and she had filled it with the architecture of this company. Its holdings, its vulnerabilities, its rhythms. She saw patterns others missed. A discrepancy in a quarterly report that suggested a subsidiary was underperforming. A market trend that, if anticipated, could save millions. She wrote it up, not to impress, because it was wrong, and she could make it right. Im Chae-young arrived on the 4th morning like a season changing. 33 years old, beautiful in the way that required maintenance, hair that fell in calculated waves, makeup that took 40 minutes to look natural, a smile that had been practiced in mirrors until it achieved the exact temperature of approachable warmth. She had been moving through this office for 2 years. Not working there, she didn't need to work. Visiting, performing the role of future Mrs. Kang, bringing lunch to Ji-hoon's office, attending board dinners, being visible in the way that reminded everyone of the alliance, the merger, the future that had been negotiated over documents she had never been asked to sign. Chae-young was good at it. She had convinced herself she was good at it. The warmth, the management, the careful calibration of every interaction. She had spent 2 years believing that if she performed the role well enough, it would become real. That Ji-hoon's efficiency would soften into affection. That his silence would fill with words meant only for her. She was wrong about that. But she didn't know it yet. The preliminary analysis presentation was scheduled for 10:30 a.m. 12 colleagues, department heads, the intern cohort. Ada had prepared for 3 days, not because she was nervous, but because preparation was her language of respect, for the work, for the room, for herself. She stood at the head of the conference table. Her navy blazer fit her like armor. Her hair was pulled back, the way she wore it when she needed her mind clear. She had a presence that didn't demand attention but received it anyway. Stillness, precision, the kind of composure that made people lean in without knowing why. The slides loaded, she began. The Southeast Asian market expansion presents 3 distinct risk profiles. Her voice was low, clear, unhurried. She didn't read from the slides. She spoke around them, through them, building a narrative that made the data breathe. She could feel the room listening, not politely, actually listening. It was a sensation she recognized, the rare alignment of minds in a shared space. Chae-young entered mid-sentence. She didn't knock. She didn't need to. This was, in her mind, her building too. Her future husband's empire. Her domain. She smiled at the department heads, nodded at the interns, found a chair near the window, and sat with the grace of someone who had been trained in posture from childhood. Ada paused for exactly half a second, then continued. The 3rd risk profile involves currency fluctuation that our current hedging strategy doesn't adequately address. She was on slide 7 of 12. The room was with her. She could feel it. The slight lean forward of the department head from finance. The stopped pen of the woman from strategy. She was showing them something they hadn't seen, and they were grateful for it. Chae-young watched. Her smile held, but her eyes were doing something else. Scanning, assessing, reading the room in a way that had nothing to do with the presentation and everything to do with the woman giving it. She saw the attention, the respect, the way the room leaned toward Ada like plants toward light. She saw something else too, something she wouldn't name until later, in the car, when she would grip her handbag too tightly and tell herself she was being ridiculous. She saw threat. Ada reached slide 9, the recommendation, the pivot point where analysis became action. She was about to speak when Chae-young's voice cut through the room like a blade through silk. Is this really the level we're working with? The words hung, the room went still. Not quiet, still. The kind of stillness that precedes violence. Chae-young didn't look at the department heads. She looked at Ada. Her smile was warm. Her eyes were not. She's an intern. A pause. The geography hung in the air like smoke. An intern from... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The pause before the geography said everything. The room knew what she meant. The room had always known. Ada's difference was not invisible. Her dark skin in a sea of pale. Her name that didn't fit Korean mouths. Her presence that announced itself before she spoke. The silence stretched. 4 seconds. Each one a small eternity. Someone coughed. Someone else looked at their shoes. Ada didn't flinch. She held Chae-young's gaze for 1 moment. 2. Then she looked back at her slides. Found her place. And continued. The recommendation is to restructure the hedging strategy to account for the baht's volatility, which our models project will increase by 14% in the next quarter. Her voice was exactly the same. Low, clear, unhurried. As if the interruption had been a cough. As if the insult had been a breeze through an open window. She finished the presentation. 12 slides. 12 minutes. She took questions. She answered them with the same precision she had brought to the analysis. She thanked the room. She gathered her materials. She walked to the door. Not quickly, not slowly, at exactly the pace she had walked in. Behind her, Chae-young's smile set like concrete. If you've ever had someone try to diminish you in a room full of people, you know what Ada felt in that moment. Not anger, not yet. Something colder and more useful. Clarification. The insult didn't break her. It showed her the shape of the battlefield. If this story of quiet, unbreakable strength resonates with you, leave a comment below. Tell me about a time when someone tried to make you small, and you refused to shrink. I read every single one. Ji-hoon was not in the room. He was in a meeting with the Singapore team, discussing acquisition targets, his mind moving through financial models with the ease of someone who had been doing this since he was 23. But 3 people found him before the day ended. Min-jae, his COO, mentioned it over dinner. Something happened in the briefing room. The new intern, the Nigerian woman. Ji-hoon's chopsticks paused halfway to his mouth. What happened? Min-jae told him. Not the details. The feeling. The stillness. The way the room had held its breath. Ji-hoon said nothing. He finished his meal. He went back to his office. The security footage had no audio, but Ji-hoon didn't need audio. He had spent 15 years reading rooms, reading boards, reading the spaces between what people said and what they meant. He watched Chae-young enter, watched her sit, watched the performance of her smile, the calculation of her warmth. He watched Ada present, the stillness of her, the authority that didn't ask for permission. He watched the interruption, the pause, the geography hanging in the air. He watched Ada continue. No flinch, no performance of hurt, just continuation, as if the insult were weather, as if she were built for storms. Ji-hoon sat in the dark of his office for a long time after the footage ended. The city lights painted patterns on his window. He thought about the engagement announcement his mother wanted to release. He thought about the merger trajectory Chae-young's father had mapped out. He thought about the 2 years he had spent managing an arrangement he had accepted because it was logical. Logical. He had stopped arguing with logic years ago. Logic was safe. Logic didn't require wanting things you couldn't control. He picked up his phone, called the department head, requested a file, Adaeze Obi, the Nigerian intern, the one who had finished her presentation while the room held its breath. He read her file the way he read quarterly projections, not skimming, studying, every page, every achievement. The scholarship that had brought her from Enugu to Lagos to London, the research that had predicted a market correction 6 months before it happened, the recommendation letters that didn't just praise her, they sounded slightly afraid of her. He called her in the next morning. Sit. Ada sat. She had prepared for every possible question. The standard new intern check-in. She had rehearsed answers about her goals, her strengths, her understanding of the company's mission. She had dressed carefully, not too formal, not too casual. The navy blazer again. Armor that looked like professionalism. Ji-hoon didn't look up immediately. He finished reading something on his desk. Then he raised his eyes to hers. How did you feel about yesterday? Not, tell me about your background. Not, what do you hope to learn here? Not, where do you see yourself in 5 years? How did you feel about yesterday? Ada held his gaze. She could feel the trap in the question. The invitation to perform hurt, to be the victim, to make him the rescuer. She didn't take the invitation. I finished my presentation. Ji-hoon held that for a moment. The words. The woman who spoke them. He saw something in her composure that he recognized. A mirror of his own performance, but different. Where his control was armor against wanting, hers was something else. Something built not to keep feeling out, but to keep it precise. The analysis you submitted, he said, was the best work produced this quarter, by any staff member, not just interns. Ada didn't smile. She didn't perform gratitude. She simply nodded. Thank you. You're dismissed. She stood. She walked to the door. She didn't look back. Ji-hoon sat in the quiet she left behind. The office felt different, not warmer, not softer, but more present, as if her stillness had left an imprint in the air. He opened her file again, not to read, just to look at the name. Adaeze. Chae-young called that evening. Her voice was warm honey, the way it always was. Did something happen at the office today? Everyone seems strange. Ji-hoon looked at the ceiling. Nothing. Are you sure? You sound different. I'm fine. He hung up. He sat in his apartment. 43rd floor, minimalist, expensive, empty in the way of spaces that had never been lived in, only occupied. He opened his laptop. He typed a search. Adaeze, name meaning. First daughter. He sat with that for a long time. The weight of it. The history in 2 words. A name given by parents who had wanted her, who had celebrated her arrival, who had placed her at the beginning of their story. He thought about his own name, Ji-hoon, given by a father who had wanted a successor, a mother who had wanted a protector, a name that came with weight of a different kind. He closed the laptop. He didn't sleep well. The days that followed were a study in redirection. Ji-hoon started routing the most interesting work through Ada's desk. Not obviously. Never obviously. A market analysis here, a risk assessment there, plausible deniability at every step. The work went to her because she was the best analyst, and that was true. It was also not entirely true. Min-jae saw the pattern. Min-jae saw everything. He was the kind of friend who had spent 10 years watching Ji-hoon go hollow and said nothing because Ji-hoon had never asked. But he noticed the assignments. He noticed the way Ji-hoon's eyes found the 7th floor when he thought no one was looking. He said nothing yet. He was waiting for the question. Ada told Kemi everything. Not to vent, to think out loud. Kemi was 24, also Nigerian, from a different department. She was the kind of person who felt everything immediately. Anger, joy, fear, love, and had never learned to perform otherwise. She was furious about the briefing room incident. She wanted to confront Chae-young. She wanted to file a complaint. She wanted to do something. Ada was precise. She was afraid of something. That's what that was. Afraid? Of what? She's the fiancée. She's got the ring, the man, the whole thing. Exactly. Ada stirred her coffee. She has all of that. And she still felt threatened enough to try to humiliate an intern in front of 12 people. That's not power, Kemi. That's fear dressed up as contempt. Kemi leaned back. She was still learning how Ada's mind worked. The way she filed information instead of reacting to it. The way she observed before she moved. So, what are you going to do? Ada looked out the window. The Seoul skyline stretched before her, all glass and ambition. My job. That's what I came here to do. Chae-young visited again. This time she was warm, performative, studied warmth designed to sand down the incident. She found Ada at her desk. She complimented her blazer. She asked about her adjustment to Seoul. She mentioned a restaurant she should try. Ada received it politely, said nothing else. She had learned, in rooms like this, that sometimes the most powerful response is the absence of one. On the drive home, Chae-young told Ji-hoon, I spoke to your little intern. She seems fine. He didn't look at her. He watched the road, the city passing in streams of light. Her name is Adaeze. The silence on Chae-young's end was very brief, but it was there. The board dinner happened on a Friday. Chae-young's father hosted it in a private room that cost more than Ada's annual salary. The table was mahogany, the wine was French. The conversation was coded, every sentence serving a position, every smile negotiating a boundary. Ji-hoon attended. He wore his best suit. He shook the right hands. He said the right things. But he watched Chae-young and her father move around each other, and something crystallized that had nothing to do with romance. This was a business. This had always been a business. The engagement was furniture. The wedding would be a transaction. The marriage would be a merger. He had known this intellectually, but watching it in that room, with the candlelight and the expensive wine, and the smiles that didn't reach anyone's eyes, he felt it in his body for the first time. He thought about Ada, about the way she had continued her presentation while the room held its breath, about the way she had answered his question with, I finished my presentation, instead of performing hurt, about the way she moved through the world without performing anything at all. He drank one more glass of wine than usual. He contributed very little. On the drive home, Chae-young asked what was wrong. I've been thinking about what we're doing. We're building something together. Are we? Not a question. A statement that wore the clothes of a question. She touched his arm, changed the subject. He let her. Have you ever looked at your life and realized you were performing a role someone else had written for you? That the dreams you were chasing were actually obligations you had accepted because they were logical? If you've ever felt that hollow recognition, hit the like button. Not for me. For the version of you that needed to hear this today. The project was a mess. A Southeast Asian acquisition that should have been straightforward had turned into a labyrinth of regulatory hurdles and hidden liabilities. Ada had been assigned to the risk analysis team 3 days ago, and she had already found 3 problems that the senior analysts had missed. She stayed late, not to prove anything, because the problem was interesting, because her mind wouldn't let go of it until it was solved, because there was a pattern in the data that she could almost see, like a constellation behind clouds. Her desk was a landscape of papers and screens. She had developed a system over the years, color-coded notes, sticky tabs, a mental map that let her hold the entire problem in her mind at once. Her pencil moved across the page, annotating, connecting, building. The numbers spoke to her in a language that felt more natural than any tongue she had learned. Zihoon's light was on. Not unusual. He worked late most nights. What was unusual was that he noticed hers. He went down to the 7th floor, found her bent over a spreadsheet, hair escaping its clip, a pencil between her teeth. She didn't look up when he entered. She was deep in the numbers, her mind somewhere between Bangkok and the bottom line. What are you working on? She showed him without preamble, no performance, no explanation of why she was there at 9:47 p.m. Just the spreadsheet, the problem, the partial solution she had mapped out. They worked together for 40 minutes, no personal conversation, just the work, the numbers. The problem that needed solving. He pointed out a variable she had missed. She found a connection he hadn't seen. They moved around each other in the small office space with the ease of people who had forgotten to be awkward. Their shoulders brushed once as they both reached for the same document. Neither pulled away, neither commented, it was just natural. When she finally packed up, he said, "Eat before you stay late. It affects the quality of the thinking." She looked at him, really looked at him, not the CEO, not the engaged man, not the controlled performance. Just the person who had spent 40 minutes working on a problem with her because it was interesting. "I'll note that." She left. He went back upstairs. Minjae's message glowed on Jihoon's screen. "You were on the 7th floor for 40 minutes. Jihoon didn't reply. He sat at his desk. He looked at the spreadsheet they had worked on. He thought about the way she had said, "I'll note that," not grateful, not flirtatious, just acknowledgement, as if he were a person, as if his words had weight. He thought about the way she had brushed past him, the warmth of her shoulder against his arm, the way neither of them had apologized, the way it had felt like the most natural thing in the world. Jihoon started using her full name in meetings, not Ada, Adayaze, careful with every syllable. A-D-E-H-Z. The way it was meant to be spoken. The way her parents had spoken it when they named her first daughter. She noticed. She said nothing, but she noticed. The first time he said it, in a strategy meeting with 12 people, she felt something shift in her chest. Not attraction. Not yet. Something more fundamental. Recognition. The feeling of being seen in a way that most people never bothered to achieve. During a team lunch, a curious colleague asked about her name, where it was from, what it meant. Adayeze, she explained. Igbo. It means first daughter. 3 seats away, Jihoon went slightly still. The kind of stillness that only someone who had been watching him for 10 years would catch. Minjae caught it. Later, when they were alone in Jihoon's office, Minjae didn't ask directly. He never asked directly. He just said, "You know the meaning of her name." Jihoon didn't look up from his desk. "I looked it up." Minjae said nothing further. He just nodded slowly. This was the 7th episode of a story that had no episodes, no schedule, no promise of anything. Nothing had happened. Everything was happening. Chae-young arrived unexpectedly. She walked into the end of a professional exchange between Ada and Jihoon. Nothing inappropriate, just 2 people discussing a market analysis. Standing slightly closer than protocol demanded, but not close enough to accuse. But Chae-young had a sharp eye for threat. She had spent 2 years reading rooms, reading Ji-hoon, reading the spaces between what he said and what he felt. And she read something in his posture that she had never seen in 2 years. Relaxation. Not performance, not control, just ease. The way his shoulders dropped half an inch, the way his hands moved when he spoke, instead of staying folded in front of him. The way his eyes held on Ada's face a fraction of a second longer than necessary. She didn't say anything. Not then. Instead, she began managing Ada carefully, small redirections, suggesting other departments that might be a better fit for her skills. Being visible and warm in Ada's eyeline, a reminder of who she was, what she had, what Ada could never have. Ada saw all of it. She told Kemi, "She's doing it again. Different shape, same move. What is she afraid of?" Ada was quiet for a long moment. The city lights reflected in her coffee. "I think I'm starting to know." The work trip was a single-day site visit. A manufacturing facility outside Seoul that the company was considering for acquisition. Ada was part of the team because she had found the discrepancy in the financials that made the visit necessary. The facility was loud, industrial, smelling of metal and machine oil. Ada moved through it with her notebook, asking questions the senior analysts had forgotten to ask. She noticed things, the way the workers moved, the age of the equipment, the small signs of maintenance that had been deferred. She saw the story the numbers told, and she saw the story the building told, and she knew they didn't match. On the return, there was a delay. The flight pushed back. The terminal emptied slowly, passengers drifting toward other gates, other destinations. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The vending machine in the corner blinked its selections in endless rotation. The smell of stale coffee and floor cleaner filled the air, until it was just the two of them, waiting in a quiet corner with coffee that had gone cold. He asked her something personal. The first personal thing. Why this field? This company? She told him plainly. No performance. Her father had been an accountant in Enugu, meticulous with numbers, careful with the small business he had built from nothing. She had grown up watching him work late into the night, not because he had to, but because accuracy mattered. Because getting it right was a form of love. He used to say that numbers don't lie, but people do, so you have to be careful with both. Ji-hoon listened, really listened. The way he had listened to board presentations when he was building the company, the way he had listened to his father before he died. She asked him back, "What did you build this company to become?" He answered without the corporate language he always used, without the mission statements and the vision documents. He told her about his father, the consulting firm that had been small and honest and struggling. The way he had watched his father work himself into an early grave trying to make it something it couldn't be. "I built this because I didn't want to fail the way he did. Not because he failed. He didn't. But because I thought success would feel different. I thought if I built something big enough, I'd feel..." He stopped. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. It was the most he had said about himself in years, and he didn't fully register it until after. Until they were on the plane, in separate seats, not looking at each other. Until he was home, in his empty apartment, staring at the ceiling, and realizing that he had just told a near stranger something he had never told his fiancée. The moment was quiet, not romantic yet, but something in both of them had been recognized, and it could not be unrecognized. The engagement announcement came on a Tuesday. Ji-hoon's mother released it. Press, social media, the full architecture of a public commitment. Photos of Ji-hoon and Chae-young at a gala. The ring, catching light. The caption about two families joining, about a future built together. The office reacted warmly. People congratulated him in the hallway. The women from HR brought a cake. It was a celebration. It was always a celebration. Ada read it on her phone during lunch. She was in the cafeteria, alone at a corner table, eating something she didn't taste. Her expression didn't change. She put her phone away. She went back to her desk. But her hands shook, just slightly, as she opened her laptop. She didn't let anyone see. Ji-hoon watched her through the glass of his office. He watched her settle back into her work. He watched her not look up. He watched her continue, as she had continued in the briefing room, as she had continued through every small redirection and managed warmth. She didn't look up. He sat with something unnamed for the entire afternoon. Something that felt like loss, and felt like recognition, and felt like the first honest thing he had felt in 2 years. He thought about the announcement, the arrangement, the 2 years of managing something he had accepted because it was logical. He thought about Ada's face in the terminal when he had told her about his father, the way she had listened, the way she had seen him. Minjae confronted him directly. He had waited 10 years for this question. He wasn't going to wait anymore. I've watched you for 10 years. You have never once worked late because someone else stayed. You've never looked up a name's etymology. What are you doing? Jihoon was quiet for a long time. The city lights painted his window. He thought about the engagement, the arrangement, the 2 years of managing something he had accepted because it was logical. I accepted an arrangement because it was logical. I think I forgot there was anything else. What do you want to do about it? Nothing. She's my intern. She's also a person, Jihoon. Jihoon said nothing else. That night, Chaeyoung called to plan the engagement celebration dinner. He confirmed every detail with precision. He hung up. He stared at the ceiling for a long time. He thought about Ada's hands. The way they moved when she worked, the precision of them, the way they held a pencil like a weapon and a gift at the same time. He didn't sleep. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people who think they know you, who have built a version of you in their minds and are performing their relationship with that version. If you've ever felt that disconnect between who people think you are and who you actually are, drop a comment. Let me know I'm not alone in telling this story. The engagement celebration was everything it was supposed to be. Family, board members, senior staff. The intern cohort had been included as a professional courtesy. Jihoon told himself that. Professional courtesy, nothing more. But he had looked at the guest list 3 times. He had told himself he was being thorough. He knew he was looking for one name. Chaeyoung arrived magnificent and controlled. Her gown was custom, champagne-colored, catching light like a weapon. Her smile was calibrated to the exact temperature of gracious hostess. She moved through the room like a queen consort, touching arms, remembering names, performing the warmth that had become her signature. She found Ada during cocktail hour, pulled her aside into a quiet corner where the music didn't reach. The string quartet played something elegant and forgettable. The champagne glasses caught the light like small stars. I know what you think you're doing. Chaeyoung's voice was low, precise, stripped of all performance. This engagement predates you, and it will outlast you. I'd advise you to enjoy the remainder of your internship. Ada looked at her for a moment. Really looked at her. She saw the fear now, clear and unmistakable. The fear that had dressed itself as contempt in the briefing room, as management in the hallway, as warmth at the desk. The fear of a woman who had built her entire future on an arrangement and was watching it crumble from the inside. She saw something else, too. The desperation. The 2 years of convincing herself that performance could become real. The exhaustion of maintaining a smile that never reached her eyes. I'm not doing anything. Then we have no problem. We never did. Ada returned to the room. She found Kemi. She said nothing about the conversation. She didn't need to. Kemi could read her face. She threatened you? She tried. Ada took a glass of champagne she didn't want. She's more afraid than I thought. Jihoon didn't hear the conversation, but he saw it. He saw them in the corner. He saw Ada's composure. He saw Chaeyoung's performance crack for just a moment, just a fraction of a second, before the mask slid back into place. He saw the way Ada stood, straight, unbent, refusing to be made small even in a corner of a room that wasn't hers. He cornered Chaeyoung before they left. What did you say to her? She performed innocence, the wide eyes, the slight tilt of the head. I was just being welcoming. She's new, and... Chaeyoung. His voice was low, dangerous. The kind of quiet that made people step back. What did you say to her? She shifted. The performance cracked further. I was just being clear about the landscape. He went very still. The dangerous kind of stillness. She has done nothing to deserve being managed. Jihoon, I'm your fiancé. I know what you are. Not cruel, just accurate. The weight of it landed on both of them. Chaeyoung went home. She sat with the sentence in her apartment, in the dark. in the expensive silence that had always felt like a stage set. She realized it was the most truthful thing he had said about her in 2 years. Ji-hoon went to his mother, not in anger, in clarity. Mrs. Kang was 63, elegant, the kind of woman who had built an empire with her silence and her strategic presence. She had arranged the engagement with genuine belief that she was protecting her son from having to want things he couldn't control. She had looked at his father's death, at the struggle, at the cost of passion, and she had decided logic was safer. Logic was love, if you squinted. Without the family language, Ji-hoon asked, what was this arrangement built to achieve? She told him, more explicit than he had known, the share consolidation, the board alliance, the merger trajectory. She had protected him from the full picture, thinking he would be overwhelmed, thinking he would be grateful for the shield. He listened to all of it. The architecture of his own life, laid bare. The way his engagement had been negotiated like a stock transfer. The way his wedding date had been selected to coincide with a board vote. The way his future had been designed by people who had never asked what he wanted. Did you think I'd be happy? I thought you'd be settled. Those aren't the same thing. He didn't break the engagement yet. But the full architecture of what he had accepted was visible to him now, and he could not make it invisible again. Ada was completing her final major project, a full company operational and financial review. She was not looking for anything. She was doing her job. But the board composition, the merger structure, the engagement announcement timing, the way the pieces fit together, deals signed in the same week as wedding dates, stock transfers that coincided with family events, the beautiful machinery of an arrangement that was never just personal. It mapped itself on the page in front of her. She sat with it for a long time. The patterns she had seen in market data, she was now seeing in human lives. The same precision, the same calculation, the same beautiful, terrible logic. She thought about Ji-hoon, about the man who had looked up her name, about the way he had said "adeze" in meetings, careful with every syllable, about the 40 minutes they had worked together in the quiet of the 7th floor. She thought about what she owed him, and what she owed herself. She printed one page, just one, the page that connected the engagement to the merger to the board restructuring, the page that showed the architecture of the arrangement in the language Ji-hoon understood best, numbers. Ah-hoon understood best. No note. No explanation. Just the page. He found it after she was gone. He read it. The camera would have held on his face as he sat very still with the paper in his hands. Something deciding in him. Something breaking open. He saw it all. The connections she had mapped. The timeline. The way his life had been designed by people who loved him in the only way they knew how. By controlling it. He was there before anyone else arrived. She was there because she always was. He didn't explain the page. He asked, "What did you see?" She told him. Careful, factual, no accusation, just the connections, the patterns, the architecture of the arrangement that she had mapped because her mind couldn't not see patterns. "I knew about the arrangement," he said. "I didn't know it went this deep." "That's not my business." "You made it your business when you left that page." Pause. The morning light through the window. The city waking up below them. "Why did you leave it?" She looked at him. Really looked at him. The man who had built an empire. The man who had accepted an arrangement because it was logical. The man who had looked up her name in the middle of the night. Because you deserved to see it clearly. It was the most direct thing anyone had said to him in years. He asked her to sit down. They talked. Not about the arrangement. Not about Chae-young. About what a person builds a company for. What they want their life to mean. About the difference between being settled and being alive. Nothing was declared. No promises were made. But something irrevocable happened in that office, and both of them knew it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do for someone is show them the truth they've been avoiding. Not to hurt them. Not to win. But because clarity is the only gift that lasts. If you've ever had someone give you that gift, or if you've ever been brave enough to give it, let me know in the comments. Those moments change everything. Chae-young found out about the page. She didn't know what was on it. But she knew Ada had left something on Jihoon's desk. She knew because she had made it her business to know everything that passed between them. She had sources. She had eyes. She had the particular desperation of someone who feels the ground shifting beneath her feet. She went to Ada directly. No warmth, no management, just the raw edge of fear. The internship can end early. I have influence with this company's board, including intern retention decisions. Ada looked at her for a long moment. She saw the woman who had tried to humiliate her, the woman who had tried to manage her, the woman who was now threatening her, and she felt something she hadn't expected. Pity. Not sympathy, not forgiveness, but pity. For the years Chae-young had spent building a castle on sand, for the performance that had become her entire identity, for the fear that had driven every action, every smile, every carefully calibrated warmth. You can do that, but it won't change the page. What page? Ada said nothing. She didn't need to. The silence was louder than any explanation. Chae-young went to Jihoon, demanded he end the internship immediately. No. Jihoon, this girl. Her name is Adeze, and I'm not ending anything. Chae-young stared at him. This was the first time he had refused her anything. The first time in 2 years that the arrangement had encountered a boundary it could not cross. She understood, in that moment, that she was already lost. Jihoon ended the engagement. No drama, no scene, just the quiet certainty of a man who had finally seen his own life clearly. He called Chae-young's father first, out of respect for what the arrangement actually was. A business deal. A transaction. He told him the merger could proceed without the marriage. The business logic was sound. The personal logic was not. Her father threatened complications. Board challenges, stock maneuvers, the machinery of power that had built the arrangement in the first place. Jihoon said, "I'm aware." He hung up. He called his mother. Mrs. Kang was quietly devastated. Not dramatically, not performatively. In the way of someone who had genuinely believed they were doing right and was now being shown the cost of that belief. "I know you thought you were protecting me," Jihoon said, "but I stopped being present in my own life, and I let you think that was acceptable." His mother cried. He didn't collapse. He held the line he had finally found. Chae-young sent Ada one final message. "I hope you know what you cost me." Ada read it. She sat with it for a moment. She thought about the woman who had sent it. The years of performance. The fear that had driven every action. The future that had been built on sand and was now washing away. Then she put her phone down. She went to complete her last project. Not because she was unaffected, because she had learned, in rooms like this, that the most powerful response to someone else's pain is to keep doing your work with integrity. She was not responsible for Chae-young's losses. Chae-young had built those herself. 2 years of convincing herself that management could become love, that performance could become real. Ada's last day. She submitted her completed project, the best work the company had produced all year. She said her goodbyes. Kemi was tearful, clinging to her in the hallway, promising to visit, to call, to stay connected across the distance that was already opening between them. Ada was composed. She had learned to be. She took the lift to the lobby with her bag. Her mind was already moving forward, to the next opportunity, the next challenge, the next room where she would refuse to shrink. Jihoon was there. He didn't announce he would be. He just was. Standing in the marble lobby like a man who had forgotten how to be anywhere else. "I want to offer you a permanent position, full-time, because you're the best analyst this company has." She looked at him. She saw the offer. She saw the man behind it. She saw the 2 months of late nights and shared work and unspoken recognition. "Is that the only reason?" He held her gaze. The controlled man. The man who had built an empire. The man who had looked up her name in the middle of the night. "No." "Then ask me properly." He said her name, the way he always had, like he learned it before he learned anything else about her. Adeze. The syllables careful, weighted, precious. "Will you stay?" She looked at him. She looked at the door. She looked at the future that was opening in front of her. Not the one she had planned, not the one she had expected, but the one that was real. I'll think about it. She walked past him, through the door, into the light of a Seoul afternoon that felt different than any afternoon before it. He turned and watched her go, and almost smiled at the empty lobby. Because he knew her. He knew that, I'll think about it, was not a no. It was Ada's way of saying yes while keeping her power, while keeping her choice. On the other side of the glass, her hand found her phone. She typed one word to Kemi. Yes. 6 months later, Ada was permanent staff. She had her own desk, her own projects, her own nameplate that read, Adagi's Obi, Senior Analyst, in the careful Korean that she had learned to write. She and Ji-hoon were together, quietly, without performance. They didn't announce it. They didn't need to. The office knew because the respect in how they moved around each other was entirely visible. The way he looked at her in meetings. The way she challenged his assumptions without fear. The way they worked late together, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Chae-young's father had created minor complications with the merger. Ji-hoon handled them cleanly. The business was stronger for it, built on real foundations instead of arranged ones. Mrs. Kang had tea with Ada once a month. She called her a difficult woman, and there was full admiration in the words. She had finally seen what her son saw, not a threat to be managed, but a person to be respected. Kemi got a permanent offer too. She was terrible at the work sometimes, brilliant at it others, and always, always real. The company needed people like her. The company needed people like both of them. The insult, the one that had started everything, got referenced once. Late in the office. Working because they wanted to, not because they had to. The city outside the window, all light and life. I should have been in that room, Ji-hoon said. When she said what she said, I should have been there. Ada didn't look up from her spreadsheet. You read the file after. That was enough. No, it wasn't. She said his name. Once. The way she said it. The way that made him look at her. Ji-hoon. He looked up. She was watching him now. The composure, the precision, the warmth that she only showed when she trusted the room. She did me a favor, whatever she thought she was doing. How? She showed me exactly what I was walking into, and she showed me exactly what I wasn't going to become. The camera would find the city outside the window, 2 people at a desk. Not a dramatic tableau, just a Tuesday, just another night of work that felt like purpose. Her name means first daughter. He learned that in episode 7. He never forgot. Sniff. And that is where we leave them. Not at a wedding, not at a dramatic declaration. Just at a desk, on a Tuesday, building something real from the wreckage of what was arranged. This story is about so many things. About the courage to refuse to shrink. About the cost of choosing truth over safety. About the love that doesn't announce itself with fireworks, but with the careful pronunciation of a name, with spreadsheets at 2 a.m., with the quiet recognition of another person's soul. If this story moved you, if you felt Ada's composure, Ji-hoon's awakening, the weight of every choice they made, then I need you to do 3 things. First, hit that subscribe button, because I tell stories like this every week. Stories about real human courage. Stories that don't shout but simply stand. Stories that stay with you long after the video ends. Second, leave a comment. Tell me which moment hit you the hardest. Was it Ada finishing her presentation? Ji-hoon learning her name's meaning? The page on the desk? Or that final scene where she says, I'll think about it, and walks into the light? Third, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is performing a role they didn't write. Someone who is building something real while the world tries to sell them something arranged. Someone who needs to be reminded that choosing truth is always worth the cost. Until next time, remember, your name has meaning, your work has weight, and you deserve to be seen clearly.